Coming up in this episode, Euan Buchan, the Edinburgh Birdwatcher, is celebrating 20 years of birding. There's an update on the Blue Tits nest that I'm watching via remote camera. And in Last Call, there's a glorious 5 minutes of a dawn chorus recorded in the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire. Stay after the end credits to enjoy that. Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Suzy Buttress. As a casual birder, I take pleasure in watching the wild birds around me, wherever I am. In my show, I share the joy of birding. I tell you about the birds I've seen, speak with experts and enthusiasts, go on bird outings, and I share stories from birders around the world. Last episode, I spoke about the birds I'm hoping to see this year and shared sightings from you from our Spring Equinox virtual birding event. Do take a listen. A couple of announcements before we hear from Euan. On the 14th of May, the Casual Birder podcast team will again be taking part in the Global Big Day, and I'd love you to join us. We'll all be birding in our own locations, but sharing our checklists to the team account to give us a combined total of species for the team. You don't have to be an expert to take part, and you can bird from your back garden or wherever you wish. And there'll be exclusive online team events in the run-up to the big day. It's such an enjoyable way to help provide data to eBird about the birds we're seeing, and we're raising funds for BirdLife International along the way. Do join us. More details can be found on my website, casualbirder.com. We're almost at the end of April, but there's still time to leave a review for the show on podchaser.com and raise funds for charity. During April, Podchaser runs Reviews for Good, donating 25 cents to this year's charity, World Central Kitchen, for every podcast review that's left. So you can help me by leaving a 5-star review saying why you enjoy the show, which encourages others to listen, and help World Central Kitchen at the same time. Here's a review that was left by Annika. Wonderfully relaxing, knowledgeable, accessible and enthusiastic sharing of the beauty of birds. Thank you for your latest episode, Suzy. Well, thank you, Annika, for leaving such a lovely review. It only takes a few minutes to leave a review, so why not go there now? Stop the podcast, follow the link in the episode notes to podchaser.com, leave a review telling people why you liked the show, and then come back to hear my conversation with Euan. This year marks the 20th birding anniversary for Euan, the Edinburgh Birdwatcher. 20 years ago, on 16th of February 2002, Euan went to Edinburgh Botanical Gardens for his first formal bird outing, armed with a notebook, binoculars that his grandparents had given him, and a sense of exploration for finding out what birds he might see. He already knew a few bird species and, having been inspired by celebrity birder Bill Oddie, was keen to find more. On that day, as he wandered through the gardens, he drew the unfamiliar birds in his notebook in the hopes of identifying them later. Although the first birds he noted, robin, mallard and moorhen, might seem common, when you're just starting out, everything can be a bit daunting. But he definitely had caught the birding bug and now spends much of his free time watching the birds in his garden or on his travels around Scotland and further afield. His passion has led to him creating a monthly blog about the birds he sees, which you can read on his website, theedinburghbirdwatcher.com. We started our conversation about the celebration of his birding anniversary.
Yeah, it's a very big year for me. It's my 20 years I've been birding, which is quite extraordinary, but it's actually quite exciting. I've been doing it for that long.
It's wonderful that you've kept a record of when the first day you went birding was. And I was listening back to our episodes previously, and you explained that the very first time you went birding, you actually noted down. So that's how you knew the date. You had a notebook with all the details in.
Yeah, that's right. It's just all the little wee drawings of birds and what birds did I see. It was just all, not that much really. I was just starting. I just picked out the ones I knew anyway. So that was it, and then just carried on and just progressed.
And you shared with us before in the Facebook group some photographs of the pages of your notebooks, And yes, as you say, you keep drawings as well, which is something I've not actually tried to do. But it's a great way of looking at particular features without having to detail it in words. You know, if it's got a red patch on its neck or something, you can easily show that in a drawing.
Yeah, they're not. I don't really draw them anymore because I find pretty much all the birds I drew are pretty much look the same to me. So that didn't really help that much, really. So I just kind of stopped the drawings, just wrote their names down and just tick off as I go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, probably after 20 years, you're pretty familiar with the birds that you see on your journeys. But I guess if you had a new bird that you weren't quite sure of the identification, that would be a good time then to pick up the drawings again.
Yeah, well, that's another good thing. You can take a picture of a bird you want and you can actually just look it up yourself when you get home in the book.
Yes, cameras have become smaller and much more easy to carry around with us, as we've mostly got them on our phones anyway.
Yeah.
And plus we've got the apps that you can have when we're out walking, so we can look up identifications as well. For your 20th year, can you tell me a little bit about what you're hoping to do this year and how you're celebrating?
Well, unfortunately, on my 20th year, which was last week, I couldn't actually go birding because it was pretty much wet. So I went the day before, so I just kind of pretended it was my 20th year. So I just went birding and went to my first local patch and had a wee look around, and it was a good day birding. And on the next day, it was obviously really wet, so all I did was just reflect on what my 20 years were and post little wee things like saying that was my first binoculars right next to my first notebook, and talking about Bill Oldie, who inspired me to get into birding. And yeah, I've just been kind of like reflecting and just thinking about all the great times I've been birding and all the birds I've actually seen. And I was actually looking through all my notebooks and just seeing I remember that day, that was a good day. Oh, yeah, that wasn't such a good day. But yeah, I'm just hoping to celebrate all through the year, and not just have to be a specific day, you can just celebrate a whole year of 20 years.
And I think it's a wonderful thing to do, because so often these anniversaries can pass us by, but it really gives us a view of how things have changed, how things have developed for yourself, you know, what birds you're seeing now that perhaps you weren't seeing then, or maybe birds you were seeing then that you're not seeing so much now, but also how you've developed as a birder. Can you think of some of the changes that you've particularly noticed while looking back through your books?
Yeah, that's a good question, because all of the birds I did see, well, like the greenfinches, they're all quite common, and then all of a sudden they all disappeared because of that disease. And it was like 2 years ago they actually appeared again in my garden along with the goldfinches. It was quite nice to see them again. But there's actually quite a lot of birds I saw back then which I haven't seen since, like the ruddy duck with the nice bright beak. Yeah, I used to see that quite a lot at the nature reserve I used to do volunteering, Vane Farm, which is now Loch Leven. Used to see that quite a lot there, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared, and I've just never seen it since. But it's the same with the great crested grebe. I never really see that bird where I am. But I went to some reservoir, last month, and I did actually see it in the water, and I actually felt quite emotional because, God, that's a bird I don't see that often. So it was actually quite exciting just to see it again.
On that day, or on the day that you celebrate the actual anniversary, do you go back to the same spot to do your birding?
Yeah, I always go to the Botanic Gardens, which was my first ever local patch. Back then they had like a wee kind of hide, or just a wee hut where you could sit next to a pond which used to be full of birds, and there are no birds at all, which is actually quite a shame, apart from the odd robin that just pops up and the occasional bullfinch. But recently they got rid of that kind of hut. But yeah, it's always quite interesting that there's no birds at that specific pond. But it does attract the kingfisher, and around this time of year when twitchers come and just take pictures. I try to call them twitchers, but they're actually just taking pictures, but they're not actually writing them down, so I don't know if they're birders or just photographers. But
if they're kingfishers, it's probably photographers, isn't it? Because there's always these iconic photographs of the kingfishers diving in water.
Yeah, because you don't really see many people with binoculars. They just have the pictures. But it wasn't at. It was at the bigger pond this year, so I went down and had a look, and I was just being quiet because no one was talking. And then one person said, "It's over there." So I looked and I thought, I could see it. It was just hiding beneath the bushes, and then it didn't actually go down on the water to hunt. It just kind of flew away again and disappeared again. But it was actually quite far away to get a proper picture, so it's just a wee black dot in my picture, but I knew that was the kingfisher, so that was quite a good day. That made my 20th year.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I don't see them very often, although a friend of mine has recently told me of one nearby, and I really ought to make the trip out to see it. So for your 20th year, have you got a schedule of places that you want to visit, an itinerary of places that you want to visit?
Yeah, well, I just like take each day as it comes and just go to my usual places, like my local patch camel, which is like 5-minute walk away, and just go to the usual Musselburgh lagoons and go back to the botanics again, and just like local parks, and go further afield like to the Scottish Seabirds Centre, and then Outer Hebrides, which will be exciting, and then later hopefully Norway. So that would be good, but it'll be quite nice to actually go to somewhere which I've not been back since. Like maybe it'd be quite nice to go back to Lochleven. I think that's had a massive refurbish, so it'll be quite nice to go back there and see what birds are there now.
So all those places you mentioned, I mean, Norway is going to be amazing. So I'm looking forward to hearing all about what you see there. But the trips that you make out to the Outer Hebrides, that's something that you do quite regularly, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty much every year, really. We tend to go like twice a year, but we're also just going to have to go once this year because we can't do everything. So it'll just be that in spring, summertime, and then Norway in summertime. So I think that'll be the only holidays this year.
The Scottish Seabird Centre, is that fairly near to where you live?
It's about 30 minutes on the train, so it's not that far.
And I know that you've recommended that in the past to people in the Facebook group, and I've seen you recommend it on Twitter. So what kind of birds would you be likely to see at the Scottish Seabird Centre?
Well, apart from the gannets and the puffins that you'll normally see on the cameras, but if you're just walking about on the harbour, you'll see starlings flying about, and, well, herring gulls, obviously. You can't hear them. And you see eider ducks sometimes, which is normally quite good to see. And usually around this time, you'll see a lot of turnstones. Normally I quite like these kind of looking at these little birds.
They're one of my favourites.
Yeah, but it's just all that you could just be looking out look at the sea, and sometimes you can actually see gannets flying at close range. But yeah, that's pretty much all the kind of seabirds you'll normally see there.
That's a really good point, though, that they have the cameras, like the webcams, that you can watch so you can see the birds there. And last year, I think they had very close views of puffins, didn't they?
That's right, yeah. They've even got a telescope deck, which are really quite powerful, so you can actually get good views of Bass Rock, so you could actually try and take a picture on it on your phone, so you could pretend you're actually closer to it.
The Scottish Seabird Centre is definitely somewhere that people can check out online, so even if they can't actually get there, they could see the birds that they could see if they were there.
Yeah, they do have the option of having a look at the birds on Fidra or Craigleaf and Bass Rock or usual bird feeders somewhere. Don't know where that is.
But I have learned the value of watching these webcams. In fact, Karin, who's also in the Facebook group, she directed us to one in Finland recently. And we had like a sort of virtual meetup and both watched the live stream of the feeder cam. So it was like we were sharing a bird watching trip, even though she's in Finland and I'm in the UK. But I've also been looking at webcams of feeders in sort of Costa Rica and Florida and all over the world. You can find them now. And it's a great way to challenge yourself to pretend that you were sitting on a deck nearby just watching a feeder. It's not the same as your regular birding because you can't sort of look around and judge what might be coming to the feeder. You can only see what actually turns up. But it's still a really lovely way to get a feel for how birds act and how birds look, rather than just looking in a book, which is what most of us do when we're dreaming about these other places to go to. So, this year I'm going to make more use of looking at feeder cams. Yeah. We might be able to do some group events where we can sit around and have a chat and watch a feeder somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Hello, I'm Brian Ruckley, and if you enjoyed this podcast, I reckon there's a decent chance you'll enjoy the one I put out, the Wild episode. It's all about the most amazing animals in the world, their natural history, what science can tell us about their lives, and sometimes the human history that connects us to them too. Everything from tortoises that went into space to bats that hunt birds, from the shark that eats grass to the colossal squid. It's a chance to immerse yourself in the wonders and curiosities of the animal kingdom, and you can find it at thewildepisode.com or by searching for The Wild Episode in your podcast app of choice. It'd be great to have you join me for the journey of discovery that is The Wild Episode.
So, Euan, when you're thinking about going out birding, so you mentioned that you've got a few different patches. Do you choose them just based on how you feel that day, or are you looking at particular birds when you go out?
Kind of both. But sometimes I feel like, sometimes I don't like to be on the bus for long periods of time, because it can be quite a while to get to Musselburgh, because there's so many bus stops on the way, and I think, just want to go out and bird at the same time. And by the time it gets there, I don't have a lot of time to bird watch. Either maybe it's quite getting dark or time's marching on. So now I like to go birding on mornings so I can have a better day. Or if I'm going quite far, I'll just take my lunch with me and just enjoy a full day birding and then come back and be satisfied. But yeah, normally for camo, it's just a nice little wee woodland walk, so I can just escape from people. But it can be disrupted by dogs, which is a bit annoying. So that's why I quite enjoyed the lockdown, and it was just nice. I just walking, all you could hear was birdsong, so it was really nice, and getting close up of the resident heron there. It was really nice.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I recently visited Titchfield Haven, and what I really liked about that was there's a coastal area which is just outside the reserve, and that's lovely. But on a sunny day, as it was when we were there were so many people out, and it was just so crowded, people running up and down the beach. And there was one point where I'd been watching the tide go out, and I thought, maybe some waders will fly in, and they did start to. We had a nice little grouping of oyster catchers, and there was a couple of brink geese there and some gulls. And then this family let their dog and child run at the birds to scare them off. And I was like, I understand this is like a classic childhood thing to do, but those birds had been waiting for the tide to recede, and they just settled down to start feeding, and people were running at them, and dogs were running at them, and I was just like, I don't want to share the beach with people. I want it to be my way. I want it to be left for the birds. But anyway, I walked into the reserve, and it was really quiet, much fewer people than there were out on the beach, obviously. But it felt like, yes, this is the sort of birding I want to do, just being able to wander along at my own pace and hear birdsong and then look for birds. So can you describe a little bit about how you bird? What is it that you do when you go out birding?
Just go for a casual walk and just look around and just look and see what birds are there, and just listen to, all right, I can hear a great tit, I'll just look out for that if I can. If I can't, that's fine. I just enjoy the sounds. But sometimes if you just stand for long periods of time, it will eventually appear. So that's actually quite a good thing. It was a few weeks ago, I was down at my local patch, I was actually watching Blue Tits, and then all of a sudden something flashed between my eyes, and I was like, oh, it's a nuthatch. Wow, I've never seen a nuthatch there before. Oh, wow. Well, I've seen a nuthatch, but that was my second time I've ever seen a nuthatch. First time I ever saw a nuthatch was actually on my feeder, on the coconut feeder. Yeah, that was a long time ago. But I wasn't expecting to see a nuthatch there, so I was just, sorry, Blue Tits, I'm going to look at something else at the moment. So I was watching this nuthatch, and so I gradually took a picture and then filmed it, just going up the tree for a bit till it flew off, and then that was great. Oh. Then all of a sudden, as soon as I stopped recording, I just looked to the front. Ooh, there was a robin staring right in front of me, right at close range. I think, are you not taking a picture of me then instead? So I thought, okay, I'll take a picture. I took a picture straight away, and then it flew away. So I think, oh. So things can happen. You just stand still, not walk about.
Yeah. Oh, what a lovely moment.
Yeah, it was quite funny actually.
So sort of taking a casual walk round, or sitting or standing and letting the birds come to you.
Yeah.
Do you ever take food out for birds when you're
not now. It was well, when I used to work, I used to go for my lunch at a local bird pond. I took my lunch with me. Bad idea, but you can't have your lunch in peace, because there'll be lots of pigeons at your feet and swans. So I thought, right, no, I'm not going to do that bit.
Yeah, no, I know. When I was in Norfolk at Christmas, I bought some frozen peas, because I'd heard that, if you're going to feed swans and ducks, it's much better to give them something like frozen pea, or not frozen, but obviously thawed peas. And they totally turned their beaks up at it. It was like, no, don't want that. Where's the bread? So I had seed out for the smaller birds anyway, and the swans and ducks just came and ate that. What I was thinking of was when you're walking around the woodlands, whether you might have a handful of sunflower seeds or suet pellets or something, just to see if anything wants to come and say hi, like that little robin.
Yeah. No, but I have been inspired by you by trying to get robins to actually feed out of my hand. I haven't actually tried it yet. I've been inspired by you to do that, try that at one stage. Just to either just sit near the feeder and just put my hand there and just wait. Try and stay awake at the same time if it's not too cold or anything like that.
That was amazing that happened last year, and it was only just a couple of days. I mean, I've heard of this happening so often before, and I'm sure it was just because I had the live mealworms, because the dried ones I don't think are... Sorry, I'm getting distracted. My little blue tit has just come to the window feeder and it's decided to stop and eat the nut while it's sitting there. I really need to set up a little... I could set my webcam up on it, actually. That might be fun. But the problem is, of course, you never know when it's going to come. So it's just to sit there for ages and ages and nothing happens. And then it comes. Oh, right. It took a peanut away that time. It's lovely having it there, but it's so distracting as well, because when it comes, it's like, oh, it's here again. Yes, with the robin, I think it was only because I was feeding the blue tit, putting out mealworms specifically for the blue tit, and it noticed it and came over. But it would come really, approach really closely, but wouldn't land on my hand or anything. So I created a kind of little tray with a wooden spoon handle that I cobbled together, and it accepted that, so it could go and sit on the wooden spoon handle and then work its way up towards the tray. So it didn't actually have to touch me, which, can understand that. I was listening back to our episodes, and you had said that you were going to Lochgarten to see the ospreys. Did you make that trip?
No, unfortunately, that was when COVID struck, so I couldn't go. Yeah, I was thinking about that. We did that interview in February, and then obviously March, and then that was all scrapped. Well, I was hoping to go last weekend, but then obviously it was snow. I'm not sure if the ospreys are back yet, but it'd be nice to actually go there sometime.
Yeah, well, I'd highly recommend it. I had that visit there last November, but apparently it is one of the few places in the country where you can hand feed coal tits, and I just had such amazing experiences with it. The group was like, well, okay, now we're going to go and look for crested tits. And I was like, okay, but I want to play with the coal tits, thank you. And actually, it was so funny. I stayed back. Where I was standing was a little kind of building just on the edge of the car park, so I hadn't even walked into the reserve properly. And I ended up staying there and feeding the coal tits. And a crested tit came down and went to one of the feeders in front of me. So I was able to see and video this crested tit. And the group that had gone off to see the crested tit ended up not seeing one at all. So I was doubly rewarded. I saw the crested tit and got the video. And I had coal tits feeding from my hand. So that was a wonderful day for me. I do hope to go to Lochgarten again. And I hope that if I do, I actually get beyond that first bit, because honestly, I'm just so enthralled by having the little birds come and take food. It's not so much that I'm feeding them necessarily, it's the fact that they are using me as a bird table, so you get some really lovely close views, and that's so rewarding. But yes, I'm a sucker for doing that, but only with appropriate food. I try to be quite mindful, and obviously in some places they are habituated to humans, so they do know that they can get food from them, but there's also plenty of other food around as well, so it's not like they're only getting their food from humans. If you'd like to help support the show's production, do consider contributing to the tip jar at ko-fi.com. 3 virtual coffees would pay for 1 month's automated transcription, and 5 for each finalised transcription by a human. My current goal is £200, which would provide 6 months' worth of fully transcribed episodes. And thanks to you, we're now at 59% of the way to target. My thanks to Mel and Stuart, who've supported the show since the last episode. Mel said, "As I seem to be mentioned on the show a lot," the embarrassed face, "thought I'd better make a real contribution." And Stuart said, "Great show, well presented in an informative yet relaxed manner. You'll find the link to ko-fi.com in the episode notes. But all of your support, financial or otherwise, is very much appreciated." Has your birding changed at all over the 20 years, the style of your birding?
Not too sure, actually. I mean, it's just the same as always, but I think the only thing that's changed is how I note my birds down in my notebook. I think that's the only thing that's changed, really. Well, I used to do a lot of pishing, the pishing noises, but and I was getting odd looks when I was doing that, so I kind of stopped doing that. So, yeah, nothing's really changed. It's just how I write them down in my notebooks, really.
What do you get out of birding? What does birding give you?
Oh, that gives me satisfaction. Was it satisfaction that I've actually, well, if I'm looking for a specific bird, then hopefully I'll see it. And if I don't see it, that's fine, but quite disappointed. If not, I can just come back another time, which happened when I was twitching for the mandarin duck a couple of years ago. It's one I'd been spotted at Blackford Pond, so I had a wee look to see it. I didn't see it the first time, so I had a good day birding, and then I thought I'll just come back the next day, and there it was, just right at my feet. So, that's good. So I can just, like I normally just take a few pictures and then take a video until I let someone else enjoy it. It's just the same when I had that amazing waxwing winter. Was it 2 years ago? I think it was, which was good one. Wherever they've been spotted, I'll check their Twitter page and all right, I'll just go there. And sure enough, they're right there. It's quite good seeing these groups, especially in Facebook groups, have been saying, well, right, where this bird's been spotted, and right, I'll have a wee look down there. And it was from Twitter, actually. It was I think it was last year. Otters had been spotted at Duddingston Loch, and so I thought, okay, I'll go there. And after birding at St Margaret's Loch and looking at the usual mallards and swans and tufties, I thought, right, I'll go and check on see if I'm successful finding otters. So I went, and there was quite a lot of people dotted about with their cameras. I think there was two otters swimming about, so that was quite exciting. So I can actually say I've actually seen otters in Edinburgh. That was a good October.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So you said when you go out, you're just kind of, unless you're looking for a specific bird that you've heard might be in the area, you're just going out happy to see whatever turns up. But are there any particular birds that you would love to see? You mentioned about the nuthatch being a lovely surprise. Yeah. Are there any other birds in your mind that you would like to see but you haven't yet seen?
I would still like to see the green woodpecker. At the moment, that's still my bogey bird, as birders like to call it, for a specific bird they still haven't seen but always on the hunt for. So yeah, green woodpecker would be amazing to see. I like woodpeckers anyway, and so it'll be quite nice to see one. Lesser spotted woodpecker would be good to see as well. But I think they're more scarce than the green woodpecker. So
yeah, I've only ever seen one once, and I was really surprised at how small it was. That it was just a bit bigger than a sparrow. I wasn't expecting that at all, because I'm familiar with seeing the great spotted woodpecker, and of course the green woodpecker, which we do have a lot down here. They're a largish bird as well, so they're sort of similar, I think, to a great spotted woodpecker. Just they look different because of the way they forage on the ground and when they're flying. But I think you've said before that green woodpeckers aren't really found up in your area, are they? Although I think there's a couple of little spots where you can see them.
Well, I'm sure they're here somewhere, but I've just never been lucky to see them. But I'll have to check my books, or that'd be good research actually. Where to find green woodpeckers in your area? That'd be something I'll have to try and do.
Oh, it'll be a good bird for your 20th year, won't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a woodland near me, just called the Burnton or Davidson Main Park, and they have like a wee board of like pictures of shrubs and trees and what wildlife you might see, and they always have a picture of a jay. Well, I've never seen a jay there yet, so fingers crossed.
Oh, well, there you go. So yes, getting out into the woodland. And the other thing with green woodpeckers is you can very often tell they're around because you hear them. They've got a very distinctive call, almost like a laugh. Yeah, I really hope you get a chance to see one or maybe hear one this year.
Yeah. I kind of miss my great spotted woodpecker now. Not a regular at my feeder anymore.
No. So I know you've said in the past that you had very regular visits from it. So have you not seen it for a while?
I've not seen it since last April. It was a regular. And then all of a sudden it just disappeared. And then one day I just had a couple of a male turn up, which was, that was quite exciting. I've never seen a male often. And then that disappeared. And then a juvenile great spotted woodpecker turned up, so that was good. But then, after that, there was no woodpecker sightings at all. So my gut feeling it's probably passed on, or I can't see it's gone to somewhere else, but it was always a regular at the garden. So.
Oh, well, hopefully another one will think, oh, it's a new territory for me, and this is a very well-stocked garden with very nice feeders. I'll I'll make this my new place.
Yeah,
So,
fingers crossed.
absolutely. Now, you do take photos and videos of the birds you see, and I know you put a lot of your videos up on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Have you thought about making any sort of celebratory video for your 20th year?
Watch this space. That's all I can say at this precise moment. Coming soon.
The other thing you were hoping to have seen last time was the capercaillie, but I guess that's on the still to-do list.
Yeah, that's up in the Highlands area, Lochgarten. I think that's where you can normally see them.
Yeah, and I think you do have to have like a special trip to see them because they're often quite high up the mountain.
Yeah, I think there's some specific heights you can go to. Hopefully see them. I think there's one actually in Lochgarten. I'm not too sure. It's just luck, I suppose.
Yeah, as so often it is when you go birding. Even if you go to a place where maybe you've seen the species before, but are they going to be there on the day that you go? So it's always a bit of a detective thing, isn't it? Of, going out, listening, watching, and having an idea about what birds might be there, but you're never guaranteed. So, Euan, you've said that you feed birds in your garden. What kind of feeders do you have up, and what birds do you have visiting?
Well, I've got a couple of seed feeders, which are mainly like sunflower hearts. I've got my coconut feeder. I do have a fat ball feeder, which I think I might have to change because they don't seem to go for my fat balls anymore. So I might have to think of changing the fat balls to these suet blocks. I think they seem to be the better ones. We've got peanuts, and at the moment they seem to be really enjoying the mealworms, which I just reintroduced because I had them in the garden for a long time. I thought, well, I'll just try and use them, and they've been a success.
With your mealworms, how do you deliver them?
Well, I've got like a feeder pole which I moved away from the bird boxes because I thought they might scare off the birds. So I moved that quite closer to the lounge window, and there was like a wee tub, which I usually used to put water in, but I thought I'll just put some mealworms on that wee tub, and I put them on the window feeder as well. Yeah, well, first time I put the mealworms on the window feeder, it just attracted a lot of magpies and crows. I thought, I don't want crows and magpies at my window feed. I want little birds. So
no, they'd be pulling it off the window, I would have thought.
Yeah, so I kind of stopped the mealworms feeding for a while until recently. But so far it's just been blackbirds and a little robin going at the window feeder. But on the wee tub, I get a blackbird, I get a robin, and the occasional dunnock. But I haven't seen any tits at it yet. I've seen them at the other feeder, so fingers crossed. They'll be calling their friends.
Yes. Do they tend to eat the dried mealworms? Because I know they definitely like the fresh ones. Yes, no, thinking back to last year when they had young, I was soaking mealworms overnight so that they had more moisture on them because I felt like it might be too dry for them. But I'd sort of progressed to putting the mealworms into a nut feeder. It's kind of like a wire cage, and some bits fall out, but the majority are kind of held there. And that really brought in the starlings. They loved it. Oh, and the jackdaws and magpies. But it's in a tree, so it's fine. They can go and eat that, and hopefully it leaves the other sort of feeders for the smaller birds. You always feel like you want to make sure that the smaller birds get their chance at the food.
No, exactly, yeah. You don't want just the big birds bullying their way out, or the wee ones.
Yeah, especially not if they're going to knock your feeder off the window.
Well, that hasn't happened yet. I think they're quite good suckers on the windows. And usually get starlings around May, June time. They appear in the garden and then they disappear and they don't come back till next year.
Yeah, I have the same experience with starlings, actually. When May comes around and the young are wanting to be fed, suddenly I'll get a flock of around sort of 12 to 15 starlings in the garden at once. Yes. And you think, well, where were they the rest of the year? Because you just don't see them. Yeah,
it's good to see them, but at the same time, they can be a bit of a pest, but all of a sudden they go through a coconut within seconds. So, oh, goodness sake. So I have to put another one out.
Yes, no, they are quite voracious, and because of the noise and the squabbling, they take over a little bit. So what I did last year was I had a sort of cage, one of the ones you can buy to put over ground feeding trays. And the starlings can get their heads in, but they can't get any further in. So anything that's in the centre of the cage, only things like house sparrows, blue tits, dunnock, robin could get to. And it sort of kept the starlings out. I think the key to having happy birds in the garden is to provide a variety of spaces. And And I know that you had some issues with squirrels taking the nuts and things, and you got those squirrel buster feeders, didn't you? Did you have much success with them?
Yeah, it was. I've got the new feeders that where little birds can get the food easily, and then if big birds get to it, the shutters come down. So they've been really successful. And so I got another feeder, which was the same as the shutter. So I put that one up, and so far so good. It's quite interesting to watch the squirrels trying to attempt to go from the. It's like, no, you can't get to it. So then they just run off. So that's been successful.
Yes, they're obviously sitting there planning somehow. How can we get into this thing? And of course, the other thing is that you've got the bird box. Have you just got the one bird box in your garden?
I've got two. Yeah, I've got one on the shed, which is just a normal Nestbox, and the other one's a camera Nestbox, which I've seen great tits actually checking it out a bit up. So fingers crossed they might go back to it this year. I'm trying to think. It's been a couple of years since I've had a bird actually in the Nestbox. So fingers crossed.
And great news! This week, Euan found out that a bird was taking nesting material into his bird box. He's not sure what species it is yet, but fingers crossed that they continue to build the nest and have a family. A question that I can't believe I forgot to ask Euan during our chat is what his favourite bird was from his 20 years of birding. He told me afterwards it was a snowy owl, seen on North Uist in the Outer Hebrides. He said, "I still remember that day. It was headline news in the Hebrides and twitchers were flocking to see it. I was out for a walk and noticed a white blob on a fence pole. I thought a plastic bag at first, but it turned out it was a snowy owl. I feel bad for the twitchers because on my way back, the tide was coming in, so I had to wade through it in my bare feet, which caused the bird to fly off. That probably annoyed the twitchers, but lucky for them, it landed closer to them. What a wonderful sight that must have been. Snowy owls are rare visitors to Scotland, but sometimes visit from the high Arctic in very cold winters. I enjoyed catching up with Euan, and I wish him all the best for the remainder of this 20th anniversary year. He's been a big supporter of the Casual Birder podcast over the years, and I've been delighted to welcome him on 2 previous episodes, so do take a listen. As always, the links to these are in the episode notes. Each episode I like to tell you about the birds that I've seen recently. Well, I've had some wonderful bird sightings since the last episode, having spent a week in the Forest of Dean. Although I had to work on some of the days, it was amazing to wake up to the glorious sound of birds singing the dawn chorus. Being in a wooded valley meant that there were lots of bird species around, and the layers of song were just beautiful to hear. I'll be sharing the songs and identifying the birds that make them in a future episode, but here's a sample to whet your appetite. There was a small stream running through the garden, which you'll hear in the background. Listen out for blackcap, blackbird, nuthatch, and a cockerel. While I was away, I spent a fabulous day's birding with Annika from our Facebook group. She showed me around a couple of local birding sites, including RSPB Nag's Head, where I had been once before for a dawn chorus walk with a warden, and that was in episode 28 in case you'd like to listen. While out with Annika, I saw my 100th bird species of the year, house martins returning for the summer. Other birds of particular note were mandarin ducks, which I'd not had the opportunity to watch at close range before. This highly colourful small duck was a delight to see. They were in breeding condition, so there were some great interactions, and I even saw some land high up in a tree, which is where they nest, unlike our other duck species that nest on the ground. We also saw some common redstarts at RSPB Nag's Head. I only saw the female on that day with Annika, but returned to the reserve in the following days and saw males with their striking black faces, white foreheads and rusty breasts. A characteristic of this summer visitor is that it quivers its tail and it flies from perches to catch insects. And the final bird of note from the day with Annika was a common sandpiper, which landed on the opposite shore of the lake we were walking around. I wasn't expecting to see a wader there. The habitat was very much a calm lake with ducks, moorhens and geese, although there were shallower areas, reeds and a slightly muddy shore at the point where we saw the sandpiper. Annika and I spent some time debating what species it could be because it was on the furthest range of our binoculars. What we could see was its pale undersides, brown back and mottled upper breast, and distinctive tail bob in motion as it walked. Luckily, I was able to take some photos and a piece of video, and we confirmed the species later that day from online searches and comparing with the video and photos. It turned out to be a lifer for both of us. And a very special thank you to Annika for being so thoughtful as to bring coffee and cake for our birding day. I have very fond memories of having that cake and coffee, sitting at the picnic table by the nursery lake, watching the ducklings and being surrounded by blue tits, great tits and a carrion crow that was coming for the walnut pieces that I was throwing. And now to Nestbox news. In Nestbox 2 on our garage, the blue tit has laid 11 eggs and she's now started incubating them. For the next 2 weeks, she'll spend most of her time sitting on the eggs, although she will leave the box occasionally. I was especially pleased a few days ago to see the male blue tit of the pair bring food for the female, a small green caterpillar. It's the first time I've seen him, and I'm comforted to know that there will be 2 parents feeding the chicks when they hatch. Fingers crossed that all goes well, and I'll keep you updated on their progress. And big news this morning from Nestbox 1 in the garden. A blue tit pair had originally started to build a nest, but it seemed a very half-hearted attempt, with feathers being brought in long before the nest was properly formed. After that initial early interest, the box had lain dormant for a couple of weeks. This morning, 27th of April, I happened to look out of the window in passing and saw 2 blue tits at the nest box, one standing on top while the other went inside. So I quickly looked at the app, which displays the footage from the Nestbox camera, and I saw that the bird was bringing nesting material in. There's been a frenzy of activity this morning, and you would not believe the progress they've made in just a few short hours. Suddenly, we have a proper nest being created. This is so exciting, because I'd really thought that box had been abandoned for this season. Being able to see what's happening in the nest has been so interesting, and I'll be posting about the developments on my social media channels, so do look out for that. I'll keep you updated with Nestbox news over the next few episodes. Are you watching any Nestboxes? Do let me know what's happening with yours. And I'm sure you know this, but please do not disturb any nests by trying to see into them. I also have a blackbird's nest in my garden, hidden in a shrub. The only reason I know it's there is because I saw the adults going in with nesting material and could see the shrub shiver while they were making it. I'd dearly love to know if they have any eggs or young yet, but I'll have to wait until I can hear evidence of youngsters or see the young in my garden. My wishes take very low priority when weighed against the needs of the blackbirds to have an undisturbed nest where they can raise a family in safety. I bought my nest boxes from Garden Nature. I'm really impressed with the quality of the boxes and of the video and sound produced, and the birds seem to like them too. Because I know you trust me, I take my recommendations seriously. I will only promote companies or share products that I use and love. So if you're thinking of buying your own camera nest boxes, or maybe trail cams, wildlife feeders, hedgehog boxes or insect hotels, Garden Nature is your one-stop shop. I'm now an affiliate of Garden Nature, so when you use my link to buy their products, I'll get a small percentage of the proceeds at no extra expense to you, so you can support the show and get some great garden products. And listeners to the Casual Birder podcast get 10% off their order by using the voucher code CBP10. The special link and code details are in the episode notes. I love to hear about the birds you're seeing. Chris from Sheffield sent this.
Water rail. my 80th British species of 2022 and my 30th lifer of the year, including some South American species a few weeks ago. I've come to stay with my mum in Devon this weekend, and I was walking from the station through a nature reserve where there's marshland at the head of an estuary. I was hoping to spot my first reed warblers of the year, and had heard some, which I was just trying to locate when something caught my eye, walking along the mud between the reed bed and the water. And it was a water rail. Long red beak, brown and black back, blue-grey underneath. It was coming in my direction and then slowly moved off into the reeds. I was absolutely thrilled because I know how elusive they are. To think I almost didn't look, as I thought it was a moorhen. Straight after that, a gorgeous male reed bunting popped up, almost close enough for me to touch, and a Chetty's warbler exploded somewhere behind me. I was pleased that later I did see a reed warbler, as well as year first swallows and house martins.
Congratulations on your lifer, Chris, and all the others. You've had quite a busy year. It really does show the importance of not making assumptions when you see a bird, but to check your identification. I can imagine missing a water rail myself by assuming a moorhen, so that's a great tip. Tell me about your sightings by leaving me a voice message or a written message on my website casualbirder.com and look for the contact page. Don't forget to listen out for Last Call. It's an uninterrupted recording of bird song and sounds from a specific location that gives you a flavour of what it was like to be there. This episode, it's a dawn chorus recorded in the Forest of Dean. You'll find it after the end credits. My thanks to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast. Last Call. Last Call this episode is provided by John Buttress, recorded in the Forest of Dean on the 16th of April 2022 at 6 o'clock in the morning. In the layers of sound you can hear great tit, carrion crow, blackbird, nuthatch, blue tit, the high-pitched call of a goldcrest, wren, blackcap, stock dove, a pheasant calling and flapping its wings in display, and a great spotted woodpecker drumming.